The trigger of taking things personal is what I want to talk about today. And one of the things that I noticed as I was sitting at the pool and doing my work is I wanted quiet, and the people in the pool were on vacation. What I also noticed is they were gossiping about someone, some woman. Two of the people had gotten texts from her, and the one woman was like really positive and kind. They were just sharing, oh, you should have seen my text. Oh, you should have seen my text. But either way, I was thinking about gossip because it was triggering me. The listening to somebody else talk about someone else when really it wasn't their story to share any of it. And as I tuned in, I started getting angry and realizing that it was just triggering me because I work so hard at not gossiping. I have learned that gossip to me is, I've been reading The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz over and over again for years. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz really nails gossip for me. And it's about being impeccable with my word. What I learned, I've read The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz at least 100 times, and I've listened to it on audio 100 times too. It's one of the most expansive books that I've ever read because every time I have reread it, I've been in a different place. So it has grown with me. So the agreement of being impeccable with your word was one of my agreements that I had work to do around. And being impeccable with my word was part of my journey towards not gossiping. So that's why this one really rang home for me, I guess, is that I was connecting that gossiping that I was listening to these people doing with being impeccable with my word as I'm in my head getting triggered by these people who are gossiping. And the truth is, for me, that impeccability with my word is what I say to myself. Because nothing comes out of my mouth that isn't a result or a reflection of what is inside of me. I heard this metaphor parable. It was so good. This woman paddles out to the middle of a lake in a canoe, and she lays down and she's meditating in the middle of the lake on the canoe. And all of a sudden, someone bumps into her, and she's laying there in her meditative state, and she feels this jolt on the canoe. And she's immediately woken up out of her meditative state, and then she starts getting angry. And she's just starting to build the rage inside of her for whoever just bumped into her in the middle of the lake while she's meditating. Who would do that? And she's all peaceful and zen. So she wakes up out of her meditation to look over to see and yell at whoever is in the canoe next to her. She's pissed by now. And she looks over, and no one is in the canoe. So what's inside of you when you bump into other people will come out. And that's the answer to the parable about gossiping, being impeccable with your word, and not taking things personal. Because for me today, when I was listening to those people gossip, I think I just started just getting sucked into it. And it triggered that I have to be good and impeccable with my word. Why don't these people? Why are they gossiping? And I just started judging. And when I looked inside and I started laughing, because it's funny that I'm getting all judgmental about being impeccable with my word. And it's just a practice. I am by no means perfecting being impeccable with my word. I catch myself all the time. One of my favorite things to say is, that's not my story to tell. Someone's story that they have shared with me, when I share it with somebody else, it's really not mine to share. So being really conscientious about whether or not someone else's story and what they've just told me is something that I want to reshare with somebody or not. And I'm working really, really consistently on not sharing other people's stories. And when I say it out loud, that's not my story to share, it really helps me get back into my heart and remember that it's not. I have a temptation to share it. I've got a story to share. It's a news. It's communication, they're words. But I just have to ground myself again in, if this person that told me the story wants that person to know their story, then they're going to tell them themselves. it's not my job to tell someone else's story, is it? When is it okay to tell somebody else's story? I try when it's positive, it's funny, but I've also caught myself in a situation where I will share somebody else's story because I'm excited for them and then find out that that person didn't want them to know it. I always make the assumption, and this is the Four Agreements as well, which I've been talking about. The Four Agreements is the best book I've ever read. But I make an assumption that that person has already shared their story with that person because they must be as close as we are. And I find out they're not. So it can get sticky. But this conversation was about gossip and how I got triggered by the pool when I was listening to people gossip. And I was sitting by the pool to work because I really want to express myself. I'm working on things that are important to me. I'm coaching my clients. And these people are partying. It's their vacation and they're in the pool gossiping about some woman who two of them got a text from, and then they were laughing about her. And it just, I guess I put myself in that girl's shoes who they were gossiping about too. And I thought, oh, they're not real friends. Those aren't friends. Friends don't laugh at you and make fun of you with other friends, do they? I kind of got the feeling they were work people, but I don't know the story behind it. And I just know that it triggered me. And when I get triggered, it's a signal that I need to come home to myself. And sometimes I don't know how to. But I was listening and getting not enraged, but curious about why these people would sit there and gossip. And going into my own story, because I was with somebody today that I had a couple stories that someone else shared with me while they were out of town that aren't my stories to share. And they reached out to me and said, hey, I just want to make sure you're not going to share what I told you with this person. And I thought it was interesting because they've both done it when they've left and had me hold the stories and the secrets, but they're not my stories to share. So I'm not really holding anything. I'm just not repeating something that's not mine to repeat. So there's my little message today. I am trying to do 30 days of videos, and The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz is absolutely by far the most transformative book that I've ever read in my life. I reread it over and over again. I've read it in softback and audio version hundreds of times. Every time I read that book, it changes who I am. It changes how I see something, which changes who I am and how I see things. So if you're looking for a great book, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Cheers! Oh, Jesus loves you too. Mwah! Cheers. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Read it, because nothing that Jesus does either can we take personal. Everything people are doing, or spirits, or anything, is because of them. That has nothing to do with us. And if you don't believe that, I have one last point I'm going to make. Is the last guy that I dated was my father. And what I learned about it was that it was nothing personal. This man was doing things he would do no matter who was in his life, whether it was me or a different woman or a friend. His behavior had nothing to do with me. People's behavior has nothing to do with me. I can't take it personal because it's not about me. And when I realized that, I realized when I was little, my parents were doing the best that they could. And they were both having their own challenges. Nobody sat with them and helped them get through their emotions when they were little. They didn't have the kind of open communication and opportunities that we have to be on social and hear how people communicate and how they get through things. But what this relationship did for me is it made me realize that my father didn't do anything because of me. My father passed away recently, and my stepmother did not invite me to his funeral, which I understand a lot of stepmothers do. But I also learned she is a, what are those people called? It's common. Everybody calls people this now. They are self-absorbed, selfish, only think about themselves. But it's actually a mental illness when they have this particular symptom of being a narcissist. And she's a narcissist, I think, because she didn't invite anyone in the family. It was all the first responders and her family at the funeral. So my assumption would be that, she must have a mental illness. And I spent years of my childhood taking this personal about how she treated me. She would have treated anybody that way because she has a mental illness. And that's the power of stepping back from emotions and really healing the things that trigger me. Because when I get triggered and I get angry, I know that there's something there for me to bring to the surface and heal. And today was about gossip. So there you go. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. That being impeccable with my word was my lesson today, is to be impeccable with my word with myself. Gossip is the outward reflection of whatever's inside you is going to come out. So if people are gossipy and mean, I wouldn't want to be inside their head. And for anybody out there who wants to grow and learn and stretch yourselves, read The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz and read it over and over and over again.